Good evening, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to Toward a Quality of Life. Hope you're having a nice time. We're in the midst of some pretty heavy winter snow this March in the year 2001. We're also in the midst of another repetitive horror, namely the shooting in the California high school, which unfortunately happened a couple of days ago, and which unfortunately happens very frequently, and it would be nice if we didn't have to talk about things like this, but I can't help but say some things because of the oblique and passive and kind of denying, ignoring way we go about handling or putting aside or wrapping up issues like kids killing kids and kids wanting to take guns and kill, and kids not feeling any sense of obligation, remorse, compassion, pity, empathy, if you will, but being able to be cold-blooded killers, of which there are so many who do not actually perpetrate a crime, but so many who have these ideas running through their minds, who ruminate about doing something like this, and of course the all too frequent number of young people that go ahead and do something like this. A while ago, when the most horrible watershed event of Columbine happened, I can't even quite remember how many months ago that was, I did a program called Work Mania, Sports Mania, and some other kind of mania. There were three titles, three phrases in the title, but the idea was that we were so encompassed and obsessed with our work and sports. Oh, it was work mania, sports mania, money mania, that we are so involved in our work, consumed by it, preoccupied with it, obsessed with it, singularly minded towards it, unable to have room and expansion for much else. Sports mania being the slight amount of alternate activity we give ourselves great doses of to the exclusion of much else, and money mania being the idol that we bow down and worship to and run rat races for day in and day out, not having time to step aside, gain some perspective, reflect, breathe, examine, notice, be aware, communicate, have fun, sit and think, sit and relax, and just be. And when I get a chance, I will run that show again, Work Mania, Sports Mania, Money Mania, which describes to a great extent in two parts how and what it is, why it is that young people are feeling like killing, young people are wired to be numb or without feeling or without sense of having responsibility to other persons, without sense of any depth or meaning, without sense of connection and relatedness, and with a kind of new breed of being conditioned into a mediatized kind of mindset and psychology and existence, which is rather two-dimensional and does not lend itself to health, happiness, or to the welfare of young people and everyone else involved in societies where we all have to live together and hopefully have some kind of quality of life and some kind of sense of belonging and some kind of sense of life being worthwhile and having meaning. Now, one of the things in the aftermath of the recent shooting, as well as in the aftermath of the Columbine event and other events, so many of which have happened in recent times, is that the people who are called professionals and other commentators come out and talk in a way that tends to therapeutize what needs to be done or how the reality should be so that we should be able to handle young people and events like this, prevent them from occurring, or handle them once they have occurred. The therapeutizing, the idea that we should watch for the problems that children are having, watch for mental health status, be sure to observe and notice and report anything that would seem to be pathological or a cause for concern in terms of counseling needs and mental health needs, or that we should all be watchdogs on each other, or that we should have groups and support and agendas that foster people to come together to prevent these kinds of events happening, or that or curricula in school that talk about violence and conflict resolution and expressing one's feelings and preventing children from bullying each other, which of course bullying of course is a very big reason apparently of why children sort of go off the deep end and decide to kill. It's hardly the only reason. It may be a springboard motivating factor, but it is hardly the conditioning field force that brings us to an individual, be he or she young or old, that allows them to have an uncaring, expedient feeling to just get rid of obstacles, destroy obstacles, evaporate obstacles that are around them. It's hardly that motive of feeling low and saddened and angered from being teased or bullied that is even most responsible for why people can just logically and intellectually plan out an event and go and kill in cold blood, efficiently, effectively, and just as a matter of practical course. So there is so much therapeutizing in the aftermath and in prevention programs, and therapeutizing kind of makes me sick to a degree because, again, it bypasses what the real problems are and why these events are happening and how they ever could be prevented. And we should not have a culture that bases itself on just trying to prevent these kinds of things. What's really more rotten, what's really more fundamentally flawed and wrong, we are probably never going to address, but it hinges on many factors that are intricate and integral to the very culture, if that's what you can call, the very system, the very fabric, the very network of the kind of people we are and the way we're living our life. And these mostly stem from the times in which we live, with a multivariable complex of factors coming on, especially to young people more than ever, being at the receiving end and in the conditioning midst of all these factors, becoming wired to be even new kinds of individuals that can just automatically, automatonically, robotically, and pragmatically do deeds that in previous times we would think are beyond the pale, unimaginable, and certainly bring so much suffering and sorrow to us because of them happening at all. Therapeutizing, again, misses the mark, and it's kind of sickening because it goes around what fundamentally is really in fact, therapeutizing, when you make agendas of how you're going to observe children and search out for those signals and those incidences and problem areas that seem to require focus and attention, when that's where the thrust of what you're doing is, you are just creating another factor in the multifactorial context of what it is that makes this such a dry, negative, useless, vapid, meaningless existence. It just becomes another variable in a whole series of variables that fails to get at our humanity, that fails to be just who we are, what we are, day-to-day living, existentially, being with each other, loving with each other, being in need of each other, and not having programs and agendas and counselings and observers and people who rat on us and people who try to find pathology and people who make programs to try to prevent all this, all the while getting away from our hearts, our feelings, our deep inner universal concerns of emotion and affect and need to be represented, need to be esteemed, not as a matter of a program, not as a matter of an agenda, but just as a matter of unthinking, unplanned reality, of being loved, attached, devoted to, known, esteemed, just by virtue of being, with no special plan for such a thing to happen. And of course, as we know from long-time psychology now, the way this is achieved, so to speak, is by intimate connection with significant others, to put it more technically, which is so critically lacking, especially time. I know there was a while when persons would talk a lot about quality of time spent with each other or quality of time spent with children being more important than amount of time. Amount of time, shared experience, to look at it technically, over small little moments of nothingness. In fact, it's the small little moments of nothingness that make life, not the big events. If we are there for children's graduations, children's sports games, children's teachers' days, children's special events, but we are not there for all the minutia, the just regular stuff of hanging around, the spontaneous moment-to-moment, opening the refrigerator, getting some food, watching TV, saying a few words, having a phone ring, all the minutia. If we miss all that and make the event, then we are missing true life, we are missing true meaning, we are missing true connection. It is that fundamental core that is so lacking. And no agenda can save it except to be just another variable plaguing the entire scene if we want to think about why children can be cold-blooded killers, what the new wired generation, wired to the computer media reality and mental representation is all about. And of course, this all takes place in a society of technology. And I know we like to tout how good technology is, and technology is certainly not going to go away, but technology is responsible and will increasingly be responsible for the kind of individuals we are processing and putting out. The end result of techno people, of people bombarded with stimuli that are physicalistic or electronic at great speeds, etc., etc. People made up of assembled into persons that are the net result of these kinds of bombardments, and vacuous or vacant from living life person to person in close connection and real intimacy. And of course, I don't mean physical intimacy when I say this, but I mean the everyday spontaneous comings and goings of being with each other in natural circumstances, unbastardized by technology, unbrutalized by technology. It's also the commercialism that comes with technology, and with technology the media, the commercialism of emotions, the commercialism that pounds our brains day in and day out, and more so ever to the youth, that ascribes parental give and take through a Pillsbury roll being baked on one occasion on a Sunday, being the heart-to-heart of parents to children, or the self-esteem gained by owning the right automobile, or the hipness and cool and notability that one can gain by being hooked up to the right kind of internet connection at greater speed, etc. The convergence and enmeshment of values that belong to human beings alone, to no technology, to no commercialism, that belong to humanity and humanism alone, being subverted and enmeshed and intertwined into the sale of products substituted for what these things should and could be, and the bastard product that comes out from this kind of commercialism and commercialization of emotions and our very humanity. And this is what our children are embedded in from morning till night at speeds and influxes we cannot even imagine. We are also, as part of technology, living in a time of great indifference, an indifference that continues to advance over the decades of the 20th century and now the 21st century. You'll notice, if you look deep into your heart, that you really can't care about a lot of things. There are too many things to care about, and you really can't even care too much about people around you because you have schedules to keep, you have commitments, so to speak, to meet. You have to keep running at the speed of life. And that just doesn't go with caring. If caring were in the forefront, one would stop and slow down and do a lot of things right there on the spot in the time that they took, flowing from one essence of being in the time, with the time that something takes, flowing from one event to another, so to speak, or one experience to another. I hate to break it down because experience is not really discrete events. Experience just is. And so we don't care. We can't care about the people that are in long lines on the highways that are trying to drive along with us and get to where they're going just like we are. We have to get there too. We can't care about the people pushing and shoving on the subway because we have to push and shove on the subway. We can't care too much about people that are hospitalized that we know, or coworkers that are facing some difficulty, because we have to stop that caring. We have to go on and carry on with what we're able to do for the moment with the great speed of life. There's great indifference. And we have learned over the decades, especially since about, I think it probably began seriously in the 70s, we have learned to be more strange to each other, to have a facade and a veneer where we don't know each other, where we are estranged from each other. And that's why it's so unusual when we find vestiges of people who know each other and stop and say hello and help each other out for no particular reason in some small, more rural areas of the country. But in the city, certainly, we have conditioned ourselves and implicitly learned and even purposely learned to be indifferent and to not care. It goes with survival, it goes with technology, it goes with commercialism, it goes with having as a complete agenda, another factor, agenda in this fabric and network that we call a society. It goes with that we would be always thinking how we can get someone else to spend some money. Marketing. And this will make us also very indifferent to the richness and universes of mind, body, and soul, and human intimacy and humanity and experience that can be had for the taking, because reality just is this blinds us to that great universe within and between each other, to the so-called goal of getting out of whatever encounters we have money, or the most money that we can get. And of course, as I mentioned a little already, there is a great speed to life, again, due to technology, and the more we advance, so to speak, if that's advancing with technology, the greater will be the speed of life. Now, mind you, back to the children that are able to just efficiently obliterate what gets in their way and even take satisfaction, a satisfaction the likes of which can sometimes substitute as the greatest joy, believe it or not, that they will achieve regardless of the so-called consequences to behavior, a way we like to behaviorally speak today. We think that by there being consequences to the behavior, that this should certainly deter people. I've even heard the current president, who is George Bush, talk about there having to be consequences to behavior, a motif that we hear so often, another mechanistic way of looking at what human beings are all about. And the very joy of achieving the obliteration, just like is done in video games, getting the net result one is after. As we are told, this person who recently did this horrific event was smiling some of the time when he was doing it. That could supersede anything that could follow. Or in the Columbine instance, the two individuals involved took their own lives, or maybe they were killed, but I believe it was discovered that they took their own lives and maybe didn't mind to do that, as so often people who perpetrate these acts come out to be during these acts. They will take their own lives. It's the satisfaction. I've even heard radio commentators talk more about the satisfaction, how much it would be worth. In joking, I've heard things go on talk radio that it would be worth getting into some very severe trouble or even dying just to get back at someone and do some dastardly deed. That would be worth one's life. Even, I've heard people talk like that. So all of this is converging, including the speed of life. And this whole technological attitude and atmosphere perpetrating, ingraining our very existence, happening very much more heavily on our children. And as I say, I do have that program, which I will show another time, which specifically talks about how children can come to be who they are, such that those of us of different generations cannot even recognize, including the children that are not negative or hostile or wanting to do such bad acts, we still can't imagine what the new generation coming up under this kind of technology, media, and commercialism is like. What kind of whole new organism has been and will continue to be created. We can't even identify. Identifying is out. Role models are out. Role models in the sense that there are real people that one can watch over time and identify with and introject values of in some kind of, again, intimate way. That is out. Identification as a psychological principle is out. Now we have also the one that people don't want to hear, the very important factor that we stumble over, that people don't want to hear. Easy to say, I don't have children, easy to say. People debate whether it's necessary to wonder about this or not. But children that are brought up in daycare as a way of life, nursing homes, the other end of life, the older part of life, daycare as a way of life is also a life that will definitely breed children that at very early ages, in so many instances, are going to have to fend for themselves and become, in a sense, more vicious. And I use that word loosely. I use it, they have to be more sharp as a tack, more more willing to grab and get and push, so to speak, even though I don't mean that physically, have to be ready to survive at all costs when they are left to their own devices, because after all, the way institutions and daycares are institutions, even small ones, they're impersonal. There are staff changeovers. Children go from one level to a next, from one person to the next. Children are separated from anyone to be there that would be wholly involved in being so concerned that the buttons are unbuttoned and the diapers are changed and the cooing is cooing longer and the crying is crying shorter. You cannot get that kind of unbounded, boundless care except from significant others. This is no offense, but people cannot give in daycare what we would give to our children as significant others, integral parts of our very flesh and blood life. It cannot be done in nursing homes. It is not done in hospitals. It is not done in residences. It can only be done person to person, not short periods of quality time, extended everyday periods that don't matter, that just are, that just you don't try to escape from. They just are, and you go through the sacrifice and the suffering and the joy and the pain moment to moment, and the trivia that are so important, not the big events, but the everyday regularities that make life worth living and make up the contents of life. Daycare. And yet we have widespread daycare. And yet we have helpless children whom we know require such intricate, meticulous, specific care day in and day out, left to their own devices, left in semi-institutionalized hands, if you will, methodical hands, rote hands that have jobs to do. And then we have our video games, which we know about, and we've sort of stopped talking about them, and I guess the deadliness and the brutality, those aren't even good enough words. The blood and gore, those aren't even good enough words. I'm not too familiar with the games, just from a cursory point of view. Those things go unabated, even though for a while there was some brief discussion about how bad. And it's not to at all call for censorship, but certainly we don't have any outcries. Certainly we don't have any people talking about why are such kind of video games being made? Why are such kind of video games being the diet to train the children of what to do? Frustration isn't even necessary. This is a training manual, just as when one goes into the military or into a mercenary army and one is trained how to kill, how to be brutal, how to be shrewd, how to become a killing machine. Whether one is frustrated, whether one has difficulties or problems or not, making one into an individual that has this kind of program on the brain, programmed people, we are programmed people. And television, of course, you can turn on any channel right now and you will see, on the cable channels, you will see some kind of guns going, some kind of sexuality in the midst of guns and violence and new ways, new schemes to make you feel fear and trepidation and to have kinds of horrors and evil-seeming parts of life creep into everyday, ordinary existence such that the whole world is colored as a mean and awful and fearful place. Non-stop. and this is perpetrated. And when people talk about doing brutal things in music, as we saw recently with the Grammys, talk about doing ugly things that are not a joke whatsoever, instead of people saying, I turn my back on such ugliness, allowing it to exist, but instead of cheering it and turning one's back on such ugliness, we praise it and we laud it, not to be censoring, but to say, this is how we're going in a high-speed, technological, commercialized, survivalistic, indifferent, brutal feeding mindset to become, each in our own way, mini killing machines kind of people, to say the least, of our young people. And Hannibal Lecter, I've not seen these movies, I've seen snippets of them, I've seen parts of the first one. How stupid, and make movies like this. This is not even the truth of how killers reason, how serial killers reason. The worst part of it is it's not even true of how a true serial killer would likely be and become and progress into being that phenomenon. I have seen documentaries on killers, one of whom was put to death, and who explained in vivid detail the story of how their lives went without sentimentality. It has nothing to do with a Hannibal Lecter, and everything to do with a most psychologically brutal, seethingly alienated life of a kind that is so intense and severe that it can't even be described here, nor shall I get into it here, but has nothing to do with some kind of creepy, evil monster that smacks its chops at the thought of doing destruction and thereby engenders this fear that we've come to enjoy, as does Hannibal Lecter. So, the media, part and parcel of this entire technology, this entire multifactorial context, creating and continuing to create into the future a new kind of generation that we cannot identify with. This media gets to scare us out of our wits and make us paranoid and feel creepy and feel that life is creepier than it ever had to be. And then, when the creepy stuff really happens, as it did in the high school, this media gets to exploit that fear, exploit that pathos, exploit that most sorrowful event, and analyze it, and put it on TV, and interview people, and have them tell us how bad they felt about it, and how long it's going to take them to return to normal, to which they never will. There's also the point that with there not being community, and we do not have community because community doesn't live on daycares and nursing homes and technologies and having to keep on working really fast and be indifferent, race ahead, be obsessed and consumed all the time. Community doesn't exist under those circumstances. Community exists when we're just in natural interaction with each other under no constraints of unusual kinds of time pressure that we're not even biologically evolved to, as a matter of fact. When we don't have genuine community, which we don't, and all these things we call community are sort of fake communities. They're things put together for agendas. When we don't have real community and we don't have interaction, genuine interaction with each other, then those parts of our brains and behavior that might stray from what is the norm or the accepted norm, the norm here being that we want to live and we don't want people to be killing us, when those kinds of things happen, there are natural tendencies to bring deviance back into the fold when there are genuine communities. But when there aren't genuine communities, these kinds of aberrances go unnoticed. And that's why people who are, how did we know this person seemed normal? Nobody knew. They go unnoticed, and not only that, they grow because it's like the perfect soil for the strange plant when there isn't genuine community. Not only do they go unnoticed, but they flourish. They become greater because there are no frames of reference sociologically to keep things bound together and in order and according to the norm. And anyway, what are we supposed to go on living for? We should ask ourselves when we look at young people, what are we supposed to be living for? So much of what we hear is we're supposed to be living for goals, or we're supposed to be living to be safe. That goes without saying, that we're supposed to be living to be safe. That's not a reason to be living. And goals to get good grades, or goals to get into college, or goals to be computer experts, or goals to have a nice car, those are not things that we're really living for. Those are things we may have as goals, but our whole life cannot just be goals. Goals are kind of a stupid thing, that your life would just be goals and nothing else. What we live for is human connection. What we live for is love. What we live for is to have a good time with each other, just by being. That's what we live for. We live for humanity, believe it or not. We live for intimacy. We live for knowing each other and people knowing us. Just as much as we want to be recognized, we also want to recognize people. It's fun. Being social together is the greatest gift of all. And, ironically, our very health depends on it. Our mental health certainly depends on it. Our physical health depends on it. Our spiritual health depends on it. We are a gregarious lot, and we are going off the cliff. We are going in the totally wrong direction. And I bring all these things up just as food for thought. When we talk about kids who kill, increasingly so, and never get at the core reasons why this isn't going to stop, no matter how many programs you put into place to prevent it. In fact, those programs are other factors with which stressed and problematically conditioned people have to contend. Problematically conditioned people such as our children and such as ourselves. And the genesis of all mental health is love, connection, recognition, being valued by people, literally because they really know you, loving you for who you are, and vice versa. And the antithesis of mental health is everything that is not that, from downright mental brutality to ignoring, indifference, apathy, rejection, and lack of connection. And so the technological world is not all that it's cracked up to be. That's for sure. So we should face that, and we should face, not that it's going to change, I'm afraid, but when bad things happen and so much pain has to be endured, for a lifetime, it's worth pointing out how far-fetched and far-flung we are from the true roots of meaningful human existence and fruitful human existence. For the conclusion of this show, I'm going to switch topics and talk about the perennial topic, which is the poor animals, and the poor animals in laboratories and the poor animals in research. And I'm going to read to you another travesty, another immorality, another conclusion and step taken in the technological marching on of history. Another step taken in our brave new world of immorality. Another step taken in our world of processed people, alienation, pollution, depression, rage, stress, and kids who kill, children who kill. This article I'm going to read to you comes from January 11th in the year 2001, and it's about the first genetically modified monkey. Be thankful that such a creature is not you or I. Just thank your lucky stars for that at least. The article is from the BBC News, and it starts out by saying that the first genetically modified monkey has been born in the United States. And I will have a picture of that monkey in the edited version of this show. The scientists who produced the animal at the Oregon Regional Primate Research Center say their experiments may suggest a way to speed new treatments for a host of disabling human conditions. The rhesus monkey was made from an egg that had been modified to include a simple jellyfish gene. This makes a cell molecule glow under a special microscope. But the researchers say that the same technology could be used to introduce more significant changes, such as those that would make primates mimic closely human diseases like breast cancer or HIV. In other words, they're saying they can introduce genes into monkeys and other living creatures that will mimic what it would be like in humans who have cancer or HIV, so that these animals will be born with disease, especially modified to have disease to be research tools of research experimenters. Such animals might make better models of disease than better models of disease. Is this a world to be bringing children into? Is this a world to be human in? To make things that are living life, that can feel, that are models of disease? Is this perverted? Is this twisted too far? Such animals might make better models of disease than the altered mice and flies already used in the labs. So there are already altered mice and flies in the labs. This could hasten the understanding of disease processes and the development of new therapies. We could just as easily introduce, for example, an Alzheimer's gene to accelerate the development of a vaccine for that disease, said the co-researcher, Professor Shatton. In this way, we hope to bridge the scientific gap between transgenic mice and humans. We could also get better answers from fewer animals while accelerating the discovery of cures through molecular medicine. So he's talking about the argument that if we make animals with these diseases, similar to humans having the disease, we could use fewer animals in the long run by doing genetically modified animals, which is no kind of argument at all, besides which it's not true, because more and more animals will be made inflicted with disease to suffer as research tools in the laboratory. Mortal sin, venial sin, cardinal sin, immorality rolled into one. The first genetically modified monkey is called Andy, which is backward for inserted DNA. Many organisms have been genetically engineered. Flocks of genetically modified sheep produce human proteins for use in the drug industry, and engineered bacteria and yeast routinely provide human proteins such as insulin. But until now, no one had managed to put a new gene into a primate, the class of mammals that includes humans. And the quote from Professor Shatton is, "Our goal isn't to make sick monkeys, our goal is to eradicate diseases." This is a perverse way of talking, to say our motivation and our intention is not to make sick monkeys, but of course that's what we're going to be doing, in parentheses. Our high-minded goals are to cure disease. We just have to happen to inflict and make suffering real monkeys in order to do this. So disregard that, because that's not really what our goal is. Goals like what I talked about. Our goal is to cure disease. And it just so happens that this stupid sucker monkey has got to suffer because I have a goal. And this monkey's in my way, and this monkey is going to be the thing that suffers. Ladies and gentlemen, I plead to you again to try to be aware of the suffering that creatures who are animals have to endure just by virtue of their being animals, of them not having proper laws to protect them against being used as tools in laboratories, of them not having lobbies strong enough in Washington, not being able to send their own kind to Washington to make sure that this kind of travesty does not happen to them. Ladies and gentlemen, such suffering as the world could not bear were the doors to open and we were to see with naked eyes what is happening to animals in laboratories. At the end of this show, I will have addresses, as I frequently do, of two major organizations that do great things for animals. And if you respond to these organizations, you don't need to send money. What you really could do to help is write letters to the many kinds of letter-writing campaigns they have, which are effective over time for the various needs of animals. Not just animals in the laboratory, but animals in all kinds of circumstances. I'm particularly devastated. How devastated can I be? I'm standing here in front of you. I'm not an animal in a laboratory. But I'm particularly devastated by animals in the lab because it's a contrived circumstance where a knowing human intentionally desecrates, though we would not call it desecration. We would only call it desecration if persons were doing such similar things in their own homes and were not licensed to do so, were not set up as research facilities, then they would be taken away as criminals. But when they are licensed, again a perversion of language and logic, then it is not desecration. but animals desecrated in the laboratory, suffering such. As I've said some other times, Jesus, as we know, did not suffer as do animals on a routine basis in the laboratory, as do some human beings who have gone through human connivances that perpetrated agony and pain, the likes of which, God forbid, we should never come to know. So please, please help animals in the laboratory. And with that, I will end tonight. Genetically modified animals, research animals are out of the question. Genetically modified food, genetically modified organismic material is out of the question for a plethora of reasons. But most of all, please help animals. Thank you. I look forward to seeing you again. Take care.